as I mentioned in the previous slide, not all water is equal. It's going to depend on the water quality and what the water is going to be used for. If I'm just using utility water, sure, I might be able to just take the water right out of the river and be able to spray it to clean off my pad. Or if I'm using it for fire water, we know we can do that. We know we can put a pump in the pond and use that to spray the water in order to get the fire out. But if I'm doing a process, I've got to be very cognizant of what's in my water. If I'm using that water for heat exchange, I don't want to build up scale because that's going to plug my pipes. I don't want to do that in my boilers because we know if we boil down the water, if it's not properly treated, I'm going to get a scale, and that's going to reduce the efficiency of the boiler, and I won't be able to do as much with that water. If I'm using the water in a process, for example, if I'm using water to make a cake, I want to be able to use drinking water because I want to ensure that that water is not bringing me a pathogen or an organism that's going to be harmful to human health. But if I'm doing semiconductor electronics, some contaminants, some metal contaminants, some solids may cause me problems with my particular process that I'm using. In my semiconductors, I'm going to need extremely clean water. Also, if I'm making polymers, the contaminants in the water may affect the chemical reaction that I'm dealing with. We saw with the Flint, Michigan situation that the source of the water changed how the water transferred through the system. So the sources of my fresh water are going to depend on what initial treatment that I can use. If I'm using well water, I might have to treat it a little differently than if I'm using pond water. For example, in pond water, I'm going to see algae, I'm going to see little bits of dirt, I'm going to see suspended solids, I'm going to see a number of different things. Whereas in well water, the water may come out clearer, but I might have dissolved metals. For example, in India and other places, arsenic is a problem because there's dissolved arsenic in the water. So the source of the water is going to imply my treatment that I'm going to start with, and the process that I'm putting my water in is also going to deal with the types of treatment that I have. Subsequently, once I use the water, it can have the potential to get contaminated by its use, or I may take things out of it that make it important, and I'm going to have to do wastewater treatment on the other end.